What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm your host today, Alex Van Aken, back from a 16-day trip to Japan and California. Happy to be back. Thank you for filling in for me while I was gone, Marcus. How are you, Marcus?
I hope I didn't leave too much of a mess for you to clean up. I like to think that you coming back is like the end of a Home Alone movie where Kevin's cleaning up all the traps and he has to do it in like a few hours, and then the parents are none the parents
walk in, they're like, "Huh, you got up to some stuff while I was gone, huh?" Yeah,
or they even acknowledge his existence still. They're like, "Oh, what's up with you?"
I mean, I feel like I acknowledge your existence, Marcus.
I like to think that you're better than Kevin's parents, which isn't saying much, but
although I was on the plane to Japan and I like sat straight up and I was like, Marcus,
we forgot him.
Thank you for. Sorry, I'm adjusting my lights. For the video viewers.
Fancy.
Yeah. Well,
what changed?
Just the intensity of it. The shadows are smoother on my face now.
Okay.
At least I like to think so. We are joined as well by Charles Hart. How you doing, Charles?
I'm good. I was the Joe Pesci to Marcus's Macaulay Culkin. So I was kind of the one.
Did you get your hand caught on fire and whatnot?
I was on fire. I was so sticky, dude. I had to really I just had to really go decompress. So I'm glad the mom is back. Which I guess
how's your friend's foot doing? By the way,
he's actually dead. It's crazy.
Oh,
actually, no, that's Kyle. That would be Kyle in this metaphor, I guess.
Yeah.
Except he's a regular host, so I don't know. It doesn't really hold up, but I'm fine now. Is the moral of this podcast story?
Charles, wouldn't you be the other guy because you're pretty tall, right?
No, I'm Joe Pesci because I called dibs on Joe Pesci. The reason I did it is because I know his name. We're calling the other guy.
How's your gold tooth, by the way?
I actually took it out because it's more valuable that way. But I am gonna be bidding it off.
So you got it back from Marcus's dad, who picks it up at the end of the movie.
I've only seen Home Alone one time, so I don't know the details of this super well.
Wow.
At least it's not the sequel where you get bricks thrown at your face.
Oh, I don't want to do that. Alex, you can't leave again because I'm not. I haven't signed on for that.
You know what's wild is what year were you born, Charles?
2000, baby.
Oh God.
You know exactly how old I am in any given year.
Yeah. Charles was born 10 years after Home Alone released. So
old people know.
To be fair, I was born 1 year after Home Alone release, so it's not like I was like,
What?
Yeah, it's an old movie.
No, I'm the old.
You're 9 years older than me.
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
I know my skin doesn't look like it, but
I don't.
Especially thanks to that lighting that you.
Yeah, that soft lighting. Yeah, I'm old. I'm 31.
It's not like old. It's just like
it's just
born 1 year after Home Alone.
Yeah, born after 1 year. Born 1 year after Home Alone, years old. Wesley LeBlanc, the news hound himself, my roommate at Summer Game Fest this year. That was an adventure. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I still feel like I'm recovering from California.
Me
somehow.
too.
Even though I shouldn't be, but like I cannot get back onto my sleep schedule, and I'm just tired all the time.
Off. Yeah.
And you're probably like you're donezo. Japan to California and then back to Minnesota. Yeah, you're toast.
Yeah, I've been like my sleep schedule's been like 2 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then like a nap in the middle of the day, and I can't seem to break that cycle. I normally go to bed at like 11, but when 11 o'clock rolls around, I'm just wide awake.
I need to know, because this is the Summer Games Fest was the first time that you guys have met in person. Alex and Wesley.
It's the first time we met in person in the States.
Wait, where did you guys? Was it a cover store? Oh, it was Dead Island, right? That's right.
Birmingham.
That's
This
right.
was our first time sharing a room, though.
It
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Wait, you guys shared a? Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you guys were surprised, or like, did you guys live up to each other's expectations of like, oh, this person's taller than I thought, or that kind of thing. But I guess this has already been done. So
I think we're like the same height, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
like when you size each other up for the first time, you're like, I could take
No,
him.
Yeah.
I feel like I had a good read on Wes. You
Yeah,
know?
I think I had a good read too. I mean, podcasting a lot helps, and then yeah, we were just commiserating in the misery of sharing a room in LA and not
let
getting
me
much
tell
sleep
ya.
at all.
Oh man, there are some horrors. Let me tell you, coming back after a long day, and there being one bathroom,
Ooh.
and interestingly though,
I'm knocking on somebody else's hotel room. Like, can I use your bathroom? I'm sorry.
interestingly enough, Wes always got to go first, so he never had to go after someone
true.
else.
I would ask. And
was this
he'd be like,
intentionally,
yeah, and I'm
or-
not gonna argue.
No, it wasn't. I
This is a
didn't.
traumatic event.
I didn't want it. Like, it's not like I was like, let me go second.
Well, I mean, it was like, was it just
I was
just
being
incidental?
polite.
Like Wesley just always happened to get there first, or was it like an agreement? Like, hey, I'll
It wasn't like, all right, you always get first, and I'll
There were
always.
times where like only one of us had to, so it was like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want to go use it real quick before I use it real slow, type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But then there are times, when it's
There were
like,
times when we both were 60
fast.
BPM,
Elevator.
pretty
Down the
slow.
hallway, yeah.
Yeah.
too much in and out.
I would have been in that once.
No in and out. Yeah, I didn't even see an in and out.
Me neither.
I felt like I kept
Believe it or
telling
not.
people it did not feel like I was in LA. It felt very isolated from what I know to be LA. I don't know if that's just because the area we were in or what, but
We're still in the
doesn't feel
downtown.
like I visited.
Still in the downtown area that we were in last year, Alex.
Yeah, but not. We were pretty far from where that hotel we stayed at last year, Marcus.
Oh,
So like
okay.
all of those like cafes and lunch spots and stuff. We were like in more of the financial district is where we stayed this time. So there wasn't really a ton around us.
SGF was still at the same venue though, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just changed venues because the internet in last year's hotel was awful.
Yes. It was
Although
not
I
great.
liked last year's hotel better. It was a good hotel. The freehand.
Tiny elevator though.
Yeah. Tiny. Although this one was pretty small too, but
Yeah.
yeah. What were we talking about? I don't remember.
Each other, just
back.
basking in
Yeah.
each
From
other's
LA
greatness.
and-
Just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wes is a good roommate.
that's
Yeah,
good.
Alex is too. It could have other than one bathroom, but I think that's gonna suck for any two people sharing a room. Other than
Yeah.
that, though, it was great. And we even had our old friend Stadnik stay in the room with us.
I saw a
one
picture of you
night, yeah.
guys.
Yeah, he
We had a
crashed with
sleepover.
us. Yeah.
Oh,
He crashed
jealous.
on the couch, which was like 5 feet long, and he's like almost 7 feet tall.
It's like, did you guys just do the thing? You just pitch a tent with the blankets, like classic sleepover style.
No, I don't like to touch hotel room floors with my body.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? You just don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I guess I don't think I've ever thought about it. I guess it depends on the
Like,
place.
I'll
If
walk
it's like a nice
barefoot.
place, then
I walk barefoot, but I prefer to wear socks in hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot of
I-
contact.
I can't share a bed in any context. Like, I just need the personal space. So if there's any instance in which multiple people have to share a hotel room, I will sleep on the floor if there aren't enough.
Oh, we each had our own bed.
Yeah. I'm
We had
saying
a
if
big
it-
suite.
Yeah.
You're just
not
making the
afraid of
record
floor.
known. On the record,
Just so you know, yeah.
on the record, I'd rather sleep on the floor than share a bed with any of you.
If with you two
Cool.
and Stadnik, then I would sleep on the floor. Absolutely. In this
Yeah,
alternate
yeah, I
universe.
think it's like it has nothing to do with like. It's just I need my space. It's like it almost has nothing to do with the person sharing a bed with. Like, but like outside of like a romantic partner, it's like, no, I will volunteer to be on the floor
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's what it takes.
We typically have our own rooms for listeners wondering, but just the way things worked out this time, we had a big suite, which ended up just being one very long rectangular room.
The
It
most
wasn't-
wasted space of a suite ever.
Yeah.
Complete waste of space.
Yeah.
You guys should have told Static to bring like an air mattress. For
He
you guys.
could have brought 3. It was just like one
ended
long
up just
rectangle with a bunch of empty space.
We just made our like suitcases in the space, and then we just put all of our stuff on the floor wherever we needed because there was
Yeah.
no other use for the space.
Yeah, that was nice. But yeah, it's been a busy 2 weeks. I went out to Tokyo and saw Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. Roughly 2 or 3 hours in action. Interviewed Yamamura-san and Ogura-san, the director and producer on the game, alongside Blake, and we actually co-wrote the cover story. So he kind of took the first half, I took the second half, and
You guys were sitting side by side at a laptop with each hand on one side of the keyboard.
not far off.
And
The
then
first
just-
night when we started writing, he was on his bed in his hotel room, I was on his couch, and we were just sitting there writing and brainstorming and assigning sections. Blake ended up writing up a lot of, well, that's not even true. Yeah. It was a very collaborative cover story. It was cool. And it was both of our
Songwriting.
Yeah, it's both of our first cover stories too. So that was a cool experience doing that. But yeah, we went out to Tokyo and we did a lot of stuff. We were out there for like 9 days. I'd say 3 or 4 of those days were with Bandai Namco and FromSoftware. And other days were to be announced things, as well as a couple days just to relax. We ended up getting stuck in a typhoon.
As one does.
Yeah, that was awful.
How bad was the typhoon itself?
I think it like killed a few people, which is like rare for Japan because they're very good about evacuating.
Right.
But yeah, it came up from the Pacific, and it was pretty rough. We got stranded in a town like 100 miles from Tokyo, and we had to wait like 10 hours in total on the train platform for a train. And like I actually like messed up my shoulder. It was feeling better, but it's like the last couple days it's flaring back up. I got like shoved into a wall by like these people who were like trying to like jump on the train at the last minute.
Oh my God.
It was just chaos. And like they had me like pinned up against a wall pretty much. And I think I like messed up my rotator cuff. It was a whole thing. So it was an exciting trip. It was also, it was highs and lows, I would say.
Was that your first hurricane / typhoon?
In Japan, but I grew up
like
on the
in
East
general?
Coast.
Okay, so you've been.
Oh yeah, I
guess
went
this is
through
like Floridians like this.
Oh yeah, I went through like
Yeah, is
Is
hurricane.
typhoon just like Pacific hurricane, or is it
Yeah,
like an
it's-
actual separate thing from a hurricane?
Same thing, just different name.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've lived through all the hurricanes I've experienced, but I experienced Hurricane Katrina, Isabel, some of the bigger ones while I was on the East Coast.
Okay.
Isabel is what hit us the most in Virginia, but yeah, not my first hurricane, but definitely kind of reinstated my respect for hurricanes. Because I think for a while, growing up on the East Coast, I was like, whatever, it's a hurricane. Happen all the time. And seeing the state of emergency that the country was put in, or specifically the region we were in, it was not fun.
There's a lot more urgency because we also had a typhoon when I was there in Japan with Blake last year. And we just got out because it hit, but it didn't really hit us directly where we were. We just sort of caught bands of it, but it was still like good enough where we could fly out. But I remember just, again, growing up in Florida my whole life and dealing, like, I'm at the point where like hurricanes, like I have a respect for them, but it's also just like same old song and dance, right?
Yeah.
And seeing the difference in sort of like urgency levels of Japan, of like you said, they're really good about evacuating and they treat it like red alert. It's happening.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not like that in Florida, but
It kind of is though. People just freak out and buy a bunch of toilet paper when a hurricane's coming.
it feels like it's more like the government.
You got the
of course,
guy in
does
the
its
corner
due
selling
diligence.
water or gasoline.
Yeah. maybe it's just so used to it. We're like, yeah, people not freak out. They buy the stuff, but it's not like, oh my god, we don't know. It's just like, oh, we know what we have to do. We got to fill up our gas and get. Like,
my favorite hurricane tradition is when the guy with the generators comes out of nowhere. And he's got his pickup truck with like a bunch of generators he's selling. That's
when you find out who's like the closet generator people.
Yeah.
And like your neighbors of like, I don't know why. It's like a personality trait of like, oh, you're one of the people that have generators. And I'm always jealous because I've never had a generator.
Yeah, me neither.
And I was like, why? I would tell my mom, like, why don't we have one of these? It seems like a good idea. And I only say that because like, I'm tired of not having AC and sweating.
Yeah.
How much is a generator? Like, how expensive of a thing
can't
is
be
it?
For one that's like gonna run a house, I feel like a lot, but
A couple of thousand or two.
yeah, but I think most people just
mean,
try to get something for some electricity. So
Yeah.
In Ohio, we just had tornadoes.
that is terrifying to me.
Yeah, I'll take a
I saw a
hurricane
tornado in front of
Really?
the front of my neighborhood, which I'm like, my house growing up was like 2 streets into the neighborhood, and it was right there, and it was the scariest thing ever. We did the whole like mattress in the bathroom type thing. I'd watched Twister 100 times, so I know exactly what to do.
Tornadoes are
very
by
scary.
far scarier.
That's so funny because I see it as like a tornado is like it so much less like surface area of like a place. Like it touches down and it like decimates a certain area, but with a hurricane, I'm like, you can't. It's like miles wide, you know.
But you can prepare for a hurricane. Tornadoes come without warning. That's the big thing
And,
with me. It's like you're
hurricanes
outside
can
one day.
decimate, but I feel like tornadoes, like if they
It's
strike,
like
that's it.
tornadoes are like very intense, focused. It's like a a pulse beam, right? Versus
I was thinking versus like a
an
shotgun.
AoE attack. That is a
yeah,
hurricane.
let's talk about video. The tornado is like the hammer of dawn in Gears of War.
yeah.
And the hurricane is like a bunch of wind.
It's like meteor.
A very video gamey thing that
Yeah, like the
hearing.
blizzard
It
effect from
lasts
World
as
of
long
Warcraft.
too as meteor.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
if there's like a frag grenade that goes off near me in the game, like I'll take some splash damage, and I can't avoid that. But if it's like a sniper, like I'm not gonna get hit. I'll be fine. I can run across there. They're not gonna hit me.
Not when I'm on the
Okay,
sniper.
Also, given the choice between if someone's like, I'm gonna throw a grenade at you or I'm gonna snipe you, pick one. I'm picking grenade every time.
Wait, what? I would take because a snipe. It's like I'm assuming if you're sniping me, you're aiming for the head, and then it's gonna be instant. But like getting
Nah.
it blown up.
I don't want to take any bullet.
I mean,
Grenade,
if
I'm
you
Nah,
getting
dude.
back.
but you
A
get shot
sniper
in the head,
bullet
it's-
can just like
it's
rip
instant.
off a limb. It's not
I guess-
necessarily instant.
Well, I'm assuming they're shooting to kill, right? They're not
Yeah,
just
but
shooting.
you
to
don't know
shoot
their
you.
aim level. Like
I mean, if they're shooting to kill and they're a sniper,
They're
should
like-
know how to.
they could be
one-shot.
bronze ranked. You know, they aren't all
Yeah.
This is my
diamond.
first day on the job, sniper.
I think it's also like
You don't know if this is MMR or not. You know.
I live through like half a dozen tornadoes every year. So they're all the time,
terrifying.
and it's like they just kind of land, or people see them. They're like, there's a tornado, and then it's like they don't kill
Yeah.
it.
Growing
most of
up,
the
a
time.
tornado put a car on top of the local Target, and ever since then, I was terrified
So,
of tornadoes.
I guess it hit its
Across-
target.
across the street from my high school in 1999, which is before any of us were born.
Wait, 1999. You were not born yet.
Exactly.
Oh,
This is
okay,
before
okay,
anyone- this is
okay.
You said
I thought
any
you-
of us were born because we were.
us meaning my high school class.
Oh,
This is,
okay.
this is
Okay.
ancient
The young
lore
folk,
for us.
The young
yeah.
folk. Yeah.
There was a tornado that destroyed all the houses there, and that's like the closest I have of like, man, tornadoes can mess stuff up sometimes, but now it's all rebuilt, and that has happened since. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm
These
basically
things are
invincible.
dangerous, it turns out.
For the most part, hurricanes is just like a lot of rain. Oh, look at that tree. It's like moving a lot in the wind. And then sometimes you lose power. Obviously, it can be a lot worse if you're on the coast. But I feel like a tornado, somebody is going to have a really, really bad day every time a tornado strikes. I guess unless it's like in a pasture. But even then, cows, like that's not fair to them.
But even then, cows. It's really good.
Like
Unless
in
you're a
the movie
pastor.
Twister.
Listen, we
I
can
think- I
squash.
think we
We
can
can
agree to
squash this
disagree.
beef by agreeing that earthquakes are worse than both of them, and then
No, I actually think earthquakes are kind of just whatever.
I experienced my first earthquake in Japan ever.
wait, this
And this
past
trip?
trip?
This past trip, yeah.
Oh, you did it all.
It was the day after the.
You
It was
got
like
the full experience.
no, it was the day after we got back from the typhoon incident. And yeah, it was a small one. It was like a 6.1.
Did you do this? Were you like, oh, like
6.1
were you walking around
maybe?
and
Or maybe it was a 4. It was at least a 6, I think.
Did you even know what was happening at
Oh,
first?
I
or-
felt it because I was like, I forgot earthquakes are a thing because I've never experienced one, and I was laying in my bed after like, because it was like it was like we were gone from Tokyo for like 28 hours. It was originally supposed to be 4 hours, and so I got back and I just was laying in the bed like just dead, and somebody starts shaking my bed, and I was like, there's somebody in my room, because I'm like, I have my back face to the door and my bed starts shaking. It literally felt like somebody's on the edge of the bed, like, you know,
oh,
like,
that's terrifying.
and I was like, it's a demon or something. And then
it's the Grudge.
and then I was like, wait, it's not a demon, it's an earthquake. And then I got on Twitter and like people were like, it's an earthquake, and I was gonna tweet about it, but then I saw a random tweet from a stranger and it was like, here comes all the earthquake tweets if you're in Japan.
You
I
felt
was
self-conscious.
like, I'm not gonna be that guy,
I love that.
I don't want to be that guy.
but I did feel an earthquake. Yeah,
What a goofy home invasion tactic, also, to break into someone's house and just
yeah, really bringing this back full circle to
their
Home
bed.
Alone. Yeah.
Yeah, shake their bed, wake them up, and leave.
Good
Sometimes
break.
you just want to make people scared, you know.
But yeah, the Joker would totally do that.
his
Yeah,
goals
oh,
are
yeah.
beyond our comprehension.
Yeah. Let's talk about video games. So yeah, I was on this cover story trip to see Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Like I said, 2 to 3 hours of demos. It's an Armored Core game.
Hey, they did it.
It is not a Souls-like, which I know they've already said, but I think when you see FromSoft coming out and making an Armored Core game in 2023, there's part of you that's like, yeah, but is it really not a Souls-like, or are they just, is that marketing, you know? It is definitely not a Souls-like. There are checkpoints when you die. It's a stage-based selection, no interconnected world. It is from up until the boss fights, it is very arcadey. Like there's a end of mission score screen. You're getting points for the better, you know, your performance. And it's all about that omnidirectional mech combat. So, you know, you're kind of flying all over the place. You've got your tilt, you know, not your tilt. You're like X and Y movement as well as like the Z axis, you know, if that makes sense. Like you're kind of 360-degree movement, right? And you since you're a mech, you can like you have like your left arm weapon, your right arm weapon, and your shoulder weapons as well. You can fire them all at the same time if you want. Ammo is limited, so like if you don't reserve your ammunition, you can run out in the middle of a boss fight and be left with like no weapons in the boss fight. I'm trying to just get all the big details out. It is Armored Core of the past, but the bosses are what you would now expect from FromSoftware. Can I talk about? I think I can talk about the smart cleaner boss, which is this giant Roomba. They call it colloquially they call it the Roomba boss, like when they're just referencing it in the office. And it's like a Roomba vacuum with like a foundry attached to the back of it that like shoots out fire. And then it's got these two like long crab-like arms on like mounted to the Roomba. And they've got like all these gears lining the arms, and they're all grinding and spewing out like molten metal onto the floor. And it's like super fast. And so you have to use that 360-degree movement to like, oh, he's rushing me, I'm going to jump over the boss. And while I'm jumping over the boss, I got to make sure I don't get hit by, you know, the flame spout on its back. And, you know, the one weak point on this boss is like front and center. So I have to like make sure I'm like, you can't just like waste your bullets. You'll just be hitting metal, right?
So does the Roomba, I've never played an Armored Core game, so I'm going to ask something that might sound stupid, but like, is that boss and as well as the other enemies, are they mechs too? Like, is there a person inside the
Oh
room?
no,
though?
not all of them.
Or are they
no,
robots?
No. They're robots. It's a
like
mixture with Armored
robots.
Core. Sometimes you'll fight other pilots, like in their mech. You never get out of your mech, by the way. So when I say pilots, I mean like a human-operated mech.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll be fighting those and like kind of do these one-on-one duels. And from what I understand, like there's a mixture of that kind of stuff in all aspects of this game. But other times, yeah, you're just fighting like robots, like the what are they called? They're called the MTs. What are they? I wrote about it in the cover story. I forget the full spelling, but they have like light MTs, muscle tracer, I think, or missile tracer. One of the two. It's
I like muscle tracer better.
muscle tracer. Yeah. And so you'll have like light muscle tracers, which are like kind of like your standard grunt. Sometimes you'll have a heavy muscle tracer, which might have like a shield or might be more like tank like in its movement. There's all these variations.
Okay.
And it's you're kind of just like, I would say it's I would say excluding the boss fights, right? It is easier than a typical or a more recent FromSoftware game. You know, like in Bloodborne, like you could just be like walking down a street and you could just get wrecked by like a normal enemy if you're not prepared. I don't get that sense with Armored Core 6. It's much more like power fantasy, zooming around, shooting stuff, blowing stuff up. So I would say if you're looking for that more methodical gameplay, that's not really here outside of like bigger fights and boss fights.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, I don't want to say mindless because that can be interpreted as like inherently negative. I think it's maybe like free flowing. I don't know. It's casual, more casual maybe.
Or like it's an Armored Core game.
It's an Armored Core game. Yeah.
If it's like, if you're an Armored Core fan and you know how those games play and like just the style, it sounds like it's adhering to that.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's not like it's like poisoning the well, so to speak, by adding a bunch of Souls mechanics to it. It's like, it's not doing that.
Yeah. I do want to talk about like one of the aspects that was a little disappointing for me. I'm going to say this with a caveat. The game's not out yet, right? I saw a glimpse at it. 2 to 3 hour glimpse out of, what is a much larger experience. But like my impressions from those first couple hours is, number one, the world is like beautiful. Really striking vistas and stuff, especially because you're on like this planet and like you've got
is
like
Rubicon the planet?
Yeah, Rubicon's the planet. And like the whole setup is there's like this special substance that people are like, companies are like warring over, that's like an energy source that a long time ago was really popular. It kind of led to this big disaster, and then now years later there are hints of that energy back, and all the corporations are coming after it to get it again. And you are a mercenary who's kind of like an independent contractor, like who gets wrapped up in this bigger story. And I should say it is a reboot, actually. It's like a soft reboot of Armored Core 1.
The title.
Despite the 6, yeah. And a lot of the narrative stuff has a lot of parallels with the first Armored Core game. So it's interesting.
When did
It's
the
not like
last one come out?
Oh, like 2013? It's been a decade, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was also like a DLC or a separate. So Armored Core 5 came out in 2012, and then there was what was the other one called?
5 is Verdict Day, isn't it?
5
or is that a separate game.
Verdict Day is a separate. That's like a separate thing, but that came out in 2013. So that was like, it was Armored Core 5 in 2012, then Armored Core Verdict Day, and it's like set 100 years after the events of Armored Core 5. But yeah, now pretty much 10 years later, we get the next Armored Core game, which is 6.
Does
so
it
what
feel
I was
like? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think like one of the things I love about From Software games, or the Soulsborne series, Soulsborne group of games they've made, is like, because. So a couple of thoughts here. I would say like in their most recent games, that A to B is just as interesting as, the boss fights, right? Like those individual corridors that you find yourself in, the little fights with, small groups of enemies are like sometimes even more memorable than the boss fights, right? Like they just have an incredible sense of place. And I think that what I've seen of Armored Core 6 lacks a certain element of that. I think number one, you're dealing with just like all machines, and at the end, at some point, that kind of just like a machine is a machine, right? And it kind of like starts to be less distinct outside of the boss fights, obviously. And some of the main level we saw was Grid 086, and it's like this big installation that's like hovering over. It's like got this like giant like cargo lift that like they're trying to use, your pilot's trying to get to for like story reasons, because it's like wants to like cross this ocean, and to get to like the other continent over the ocean they have to use this cargo lift to like shoot off over the ocean. Anyways, like you've got like these really cool massive structures, but the like when you zoom in really close, and you're like going through corridors and hallways, it's, at least in that level that we saw, it's just kind of like not super memorable, if that makes sense. Like the little pathways and stuff to get from point A to point B. Like when you zoom out and you look at the big level, it's like, oh, that is memorable. Like I clearly see it in my head and picture it. But like like I said, once you zoom in and you're kind of doing the minute to minute stuff, like the action is cool, but like the locations and the small little events are less memorable than previous recent games. And I think part of that. What were you gonna say, Wes?
I said, do you think it's like a symptom of the speed of the game? Like, since it sounds like you're like blazing through areas, so like maybe I don't know if this is their intention, but like, why put so much emphasis on a hallway that they would do in Dark Souls that you slowly go through when you're just going to quickly turbo through it? But then you're losing some of that environmental design that they're so famous for now because of that.
That's a really good point.
Because Souls games by design are like, you're going to be rerunning these areas over and over because you die a lot.
Definitely.
But in this game, they're like, no, we want to keep you moving forward. That's why we have a bunch of checkpoints. So you're not going to really see this spot again.
Also, part of it is like the scale. Like when you are a humanoid character, buildings are so much bigger. You can see the brick textures. You can see the grime on the buildings. When you're a mech, like the scale of the playing field changes, and you lose those minor details that can, add character and flavor that make you remember even the small spaces, right? And again, maybe we, I think in the cover story, we recognize like, hey, From Software has a pretty great track record in the last decade. So like I think they've earned some benefit of the doubt, right? It's just like walking away, there was like a little bit of an underwhelming feeling in some aspects, of like, they've made these like, hugely, progressive games that have like changed the way that a lot of designers play and create games. And, from Bloodborne to Dark Souls, Demon Souls, obviously, to Elden Ring, like they're like these genre defining, like generational, titans, right? And then it's kind of like, okay, now we're going back to Armored Core, and like, that gameplay hasn't been. It kind of just feels like a really polished PS3 game in some ways, if that makes sense. And like they're kind of battling like a game has to come after Elden Ring, and it is going against impossible expectations. And I think like the header in our cover story is like, From takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back with Armored Core 6. So like in general, like the game is cool, right? It's just like I was ready for that next big thing, right? And it's kind of like you gotta reel your expectations in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Did you get to talk to them at all about like developing this? Because
yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm wondering if like we make a game, an Armored Core game for the Armored Core fans. Like how much discussion was there between that and then people like us because of our Souls games? Let's make Armored Core Souls now. And then like balancing that seems like a tough spot to be in with that series specifically.
Yeah, so they Ogura-san, Yasunori Ogura, he's been with FromSoftware for a very long time. He's the producer on 6. And he was kind of talking about like for them, it was never an option to not do another Armored Core game. It's just been like a matter of time because they are like not a huge studio. Roughly a third. I think they've got 150 roughly employees, and a third of those are. God, sorry, it's been a long week. Yeah, a third of them are working on Armored Core actively, yeah, they kind of talked about like. So we only got like an hour with the developers for like the proper sit down interview. A lot of it was like, wow, we're seeing the demo, like asking questions on the fly. But we talked about, yeah, I guess like the legacy of Armored Core and like its history, with the studio and why like it is, even though like a lot of people haven't played Armored Core games, especially like their more recent fans probably, but like for a long time that was like the thing that like kept them afloat, is that series, and it's always been important to them. And they definitely, I don't think, based on our interviews, had no desire to really make it a Souls like. They like Armored Core has its own fan base, and that's who they're making this for. And they hope that they talked about like the observational elements of their boss fights that people have come to really like, where it's like you have to like die a lot and observe and learn the movements, and then use that information to beat the boss, and how that was a big pillar of design in this game, specifically for the bosses. But yeah, the other stuff was just like, hey, let's do more Armored Core. It's been a while. We really like this series internally. And yeah, they said it was never an option to not do one for them in their eyes.
It almost sounds like, I don't want to presume how well the other Armored Core games sold, but it almost like after 10 years and 10 years of like success stories, it's like we can afford to make a new one now. You know what I mean?
It's like this one's for us a little bit.
Yeah, like this isn't. It's probably not going to do Elden Ring numbers if I had to guess.
I don't.
But that's like fine, basically, right? It's like, hey, we can go back to the thing that used to be our flagship like franchise, and this is for the, like you said, for the fans, and it doesn't have to be another global sensation. If it winds up being, that great, but I think, it's like, it's almost like, it almost feels like a passion project in a little bit of a way.
A little bit, yeah.
Saying like, oh, we always knew we would go back to it. Like there was no universe where we weren't going to do it. We're just sort of like biding our time, and also making a bunch of money and changing the industry. In between then. Yeah.
I'm looking at some numbers, and in Japan, Verdict Day sold 150,000 units in its release year. So I don't know how long it was on the market. And then Elden Ring sold 1 million. So definitely, like you were mentioning, sales wise, I don't know if it's necessarily the baby of From at all, but yeah.
I assume it's bigger in Japan than it is here, right? I know there's like Armored Core fans here, but is it a bigger thing in Japan? Or is it pretty equal across the board?
I mean, I have no hard.
Bigger theoretically, but as far as the fan base goes,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like,
okay, it's
definitely speculation.
64,000 copies here.
That's one of those, like, is it like a Dragon Quest situation where like, oh yeah, it's fairly popular. You're a fan, but you go to Japan, it's like, yo, Dragon Quest is number one. Yeah. Like it is. We got cafes, we got everything.
Yeah.
Or Splatoon is that actually. Like as big
It
as
is.
Splatoon is over here,
Splatoon is
it's a
still everywhere there.
phenomenon.
You know those little
Yeah.
quizzes on the subway, Marcus?
Yeah.
They're still doing those Splatoon ones.
When both times I've been there, especially in Tokyo, there's like every other store was like Splatoon advertising everywhere.
Yeah, still
You're like, oh my
still
God.
that way now. So yeah, it's I think Elden Ring is like one of my favorite games of all time now. And I grew up playing Armored Core games, and I think I was wanting more of a transformation for that series, you know.
Well, this isn't
selfishly.
Transformers. These are mechs.
I apologize. No. Yeah. So like I think it's just battling some really high expectations. And I think like to their credit, like they are getting ahead of that and are being like, hey, this is an Armored Core game. This is not a Souls-like, you know. I think that's wise of them. And yeah, like there were aspects of it that were a bit disappointing for me, but like I want to reiterate, like the game's not out. It's just that aspect of it is just an opinion, right?
Yeah.
I really like this cover story because we were able to balance a lot of new information for fans. We were able to dive into more interview focused parts, and then we had, you know, the gameplay. I felt like it was a really fair cover story. It was really honest in terms of we got some pretty candid answers about from Yamamura, it's his first time directing a game. He talked about he doesn't want our question to him was, I specifically asked this question. I said, was there anything as a lower level employee in quotes, I don't want to like disparage him, but this is the first time as a director. Previously he was not that high up, right? I asked, was there anything that you felt like wasn't heard previously that now that you're a director, you were able to share that feedback with leadership? And after having it all translated back and forth, he ended up saying that, here, I can just pull the quote up right now. I don't want to do that, so I'm not paraphrasing, because it's really interesting. Let's see. Let me grab it. Sorry.
Yeah, he was a designer on Sekiro before.
Yeah. And he started
year.
Armored Core not as a director. He started on the map team, and then was promoted to director early on. Sorry, I'm just pulling up this cover story because it's an interesting quote. Let me find it.
I don't know a ton about the inner politics of the game development team, but map team to director feels like a massive jump. Like, good for him, dude.
Yeah. All right, here, I found it. So he says, God, Google Map, or not Google Maps, geez, Google Drive's betraying me today. So I'm just gonna like read a section of the cover story if that's cool. Yamamura is now one of the few people to direct a game at From in the last decade that isn't Miyazaki. He says it's been stressful taking this new role. He had to learn how to share ideas with his team and keep the vision consistent throughout. Around a third of the entire company is now on Armored Core 6, we're told. But a few years into his new job, he's learning what kind of director he wants to be. Quote, some directors will just be very top down and it's everything they say goes, Yamamura says. Continuing, some directors like to get in there and like to get these ideas and discuss. I very much appreciate that second style. Rather than people fearing me coming along and saying, oh no, I'm going to be told what to do, it's a discussion. It's like, okay, I get to take this person's ideas and see how we can incorporate that. See how we can mix them with other ideas on the floor. This is the approach that I've come to enjoy. Which I thought that was really interesting. Like, especially like the part where he's like, yeah, I don't lead with fear. And it's like, okay, are you implying that others do? Because that's how I read it.
He's like, I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
Working it From is the Dark Souls of game development under Miyazaki.
Yeah, it was an interesting quote. Like, I felt like we got some really candid responses. Yeah, the people at, I think, going into this cover story, there's, you just don't know what you're going to get with a studio who has just put out banger after banger, and they're beloved around the world. But they were the two people we interviewed were like very humble. One of them was like Yamamura was like very soft spoken and quiet, and they're just very pleasant and very gracious with their time. And it was cool to be there, cool to meet them. The game is cool. Got a few reservations, but that's kind of what I know. Of course, there's more information in the actual cover story itself. Go into a lot more detail on the in-depth, the moment-to-moment minutia. But yeah, go and read that at GameInformer.com.
And buy an issue.
Buy an issue, please.
Issue now if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, please buy an issue. $5.99 on GameStop.com/GameInformer, or you can get a subscription. Go check out the website and all that stuff.
I hope Armored Core, what they should do is that they should rip off the original Metroid, and they have a secret ending where if you play really well, you get a cutscene with like your mech guy, like the suit opens up, and then steps out the Tarnished from Elden Ring. And it's like your Tarnished, like it reads your save file, like, oh, you played Elden Ring, we're gonna import your character.
Like
and he
Kojima
steps
style.
He or she steps out of the mech suit and gives like a nod to the camera or something, like a wink, maybe thumbs up. Who knows?
I thought you were gonna
it's like the Samus reveal, but better.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say literally Samus steps out of the mech.
No, that would be.
You did it again.
I ain't trying to get them sued, but maybe that's the Metro, and then it plays the Metroid Prime 4 trailer. Surprise collabo.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Wes, you have been playing and reviewing Final Fantasy 16 for Game Informer. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I feel like my life has been taken over by Final Fantasy 16 since like late March when I went to Tokyo for our cover story trip, and then I did a ton of features for it, and then I got code for it, and I've just been
getting a face tattoo.
Yeah. So how long have you had with the game?
I've had I'd say like a few weeks, probably like a little more than 14 days. But I had SGF in the middle of that, which kind of I should have foreseen it, but it kind of took away a good chunk of time. So when you're watching this, embargo's up and the game's out and blah, blah, blah. But I wrote my review the day before embargo and I finished the game that same day. Like yesterday I logged on and I said, hey, I'm just playing Final Fantasy today, barring anything urgent. And I played 13 hours and I stopped at midnight because I went to the bathroom and my eyes were bloodshot, like
oh my God,
dark red, and they were stinging and they hurt. And it's not healthy to play games for 13 hours straight. But I did it. Admittedly, I did not spend enough time with it. I should have played it more this weekend to avoid that. But it was a busy weekend and blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, I really enjoyed the game a lot. So I didn't mind playing 13 hours straight yesterday and then waking up and playing 3 more to finish it today. But it's a long game. Took me, I'm about 65, 66 hours. I'd say I've done 80% of the side quests. Obviously, the main story is complete. And then there's some optional stuff like hunts and whatnot that I can do, that I plan on doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, my review is currently being edited by our reviews editor, Brian. I was going to pull it up to like reference it, but I don't want to reference it in case he's like, this is a terrible line. Like, we're taking this out.
Can you reference one of his notes?
Yeah, cut this. No. I haven't determined a score yet. I wrote the review and I'm going to sit on it. I don't really like to think of a score before I write a review. I just kind of write the review and then let the text demonstrate the score. So regardless, when you see it, it's at the lowest. I think it'll be an 8.5. It could be a 9. I'm still going back and forth in my head. And usually I'd be like, well, if there's even a chance it's an 8.5, it's probably an 8.5. But this game it's been really tough to review. I love Final Fantasy a lot, and I do really like this game. It has some of the highest highs in all of Final Fantasy. There's like an hour that is my favorite game moment of all time, which is wild because I got like that of all time. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I got that earlier this year with Jedi Survivor. There was a moment that was like an all timer. And then I did this moment and I have goosebumps right now just thinking about this moment. But it was like surreal. I had goosebumps, and then I guess after you have goosebumps for 10 minutes, it just kind of turns into full chills. So I'm like sitting on my couch playing this through this moment that I can't mention more specifically, and I'm just like shaking with excitement because it is the coolest damn thing I've ever done in a game. It's a visual spectacle. It's so much fun. The music, it's everything that is great about this game hitting at a 10 just from all angles, and it was fantastic. So there's moments like that, and I'm like, this is incredible. This is like exactly what I want out of Final Fantasy. It's what I expected out of a Creative Business Unit 3 Final Fantasy. But then there's some lows, which aren't like bad lows, but they're like standard RPG lows. One of the big cruxes of my review, assuming this stays in post edits, is that Final Fantasy 16 is an excellent action game, but it's not an excellent RPG. And it is being both. Like, there is a very linear dungeon-based action game in there that's fantastic, and those are the main story missions. But outside of those main story missions, you're kind of going around the open world, you're doing side quests, you're doing hunts. And while it's not bad, it's very
kind of like,
I don't know, it doesn't feel like unique. I'm like, oh, this is an RPG, so it has to have an open area like this to explore. It has to have side quests, it has to have crafting, et cetera, et cetera. So I was kind of always anxiously rushing to get back to those story missions, because 9 out of 10 times they would leave me with like my jaw on the floor. Like, CBU3 went so hard on the spectacle and the fun and using this combat system to just like take it to new extremes. And then you get pulled out of that and you're like, I got to go fetch some coal so this blacksmith can like start his forge again. And you're like, okay. Coal, yeah. And it's like the standard, like, you talk, and it's very Final Fantasy. Like, an NPC's in front of you, your protagonist is there, they're talking back and forth. It's pretty whatever. You go to the area, oh, there's monsters, you kill them, you bring it back, he's like, thanks, here's some gil, and you did it. So yeah, it's kind of like there's a weird like pool between some of my all-time favorite gaming moments and some Final Fantasy highs, and then there's like this boilerplate RPG isms that I guess have to exist because it's a Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy is an RPG series. Ultimately, like, with the game behind me, what I'm remembering and what I'm thinking about is those highs. Like, when people ask me about the game, I mean, the first thing I told you guys was like, there's my all-time favorite gaming moment. So I'm coming out of this like very high on it, and I think over time the RPG isms will kind of fall to the wayside because I'm going to be talking about these awesome moments in this game. But yeah, writing that out and like trying to get through my own thoughts on that and how much emphasis I put on that in a Final Fantasy has been very difficult and also challenging in a fun way. So it's been a tough review. It's my biggest review currently. I don't know if it'll get cut down, but I wrote like 2,000 words because I put 65 hours into it, and writing, 6 paragraphs didn't feel right. I was like, I can't possibly do this. Maybe we'll get it cut down in edits, but like, it's a big review. It's one I'm proud of, but it was very challenging to write. And I'm really excited to see what other people think. I think people that know this studio and Final Fantasy 14 will like it a lot. I think people who aren't familiar with it or who are just looking for like a good RPG might be a little more harsh on it. So yeah, I think I'm excited to see what other people say. It's been, I love Final Fantasy. I've played every single one, and they're like big events in my life. So playing one so isolated without talking about it on the internet and seeing what other people are talking about and the hype, like, I'm just in my room on my couch playing it, and I'm telling my wife, I'm like, this is just happened, blah, blah, and she doesn't know these characters or anything, obviously, because she's not playing. So she's like, that's awesome, cool, and I'm like, I'm so alone here. But I'm excited.
In the end, I'm still alone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so exciting. So I've been playing the full game the last couple of days. I'm just past where the demo portion stops.
I gotta check out make sure my download is going right now.
I'm so happy to hear that the main story seems to deliver, because that's the thing that like has driven me the most. Like, I think the combat's phenomenal, and I'll talk about that in a second, but like,
yeah,
the story is so good, and even knowing that Game of Thrones was a primary influence, I'm still sort of like taken aback at just how Game of Thrones it is. Like the cutscenes, the dialogue, even just the situations and some of the archetypes of the characters of like, you can almost see some of the like, oh, this is the Cersei character.
Yeah.
And even Clive, I'm like, oh, Clive's Jon Snow. Like 1000%, he's Jon Snow.
It is very like, I mean, surprise, the story of Final Fantasy 16 doesn't follow the story of Game of Thrones. It goes to some wild places, but yeah, it's extremely inspired by like the archetypes of Game of Thrones characters, sometimes to a fault, other times I don't know if it's on purpose, but they kind of use that to flip expectations and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, if you play the Final Fantasy demo, it is so clear that Annabella, his mom, is supposed to be like a Cersei-like character. Like it's right from the jump, you're just like, okay, this is Game of Thrones. And
or even just the cursing and the not
sex
full
scenes.
nudity, but like seeing a sex scene in a Final Fantasy game is so wild. And there were points where I had to remind myself, like, this is a Final Fantasy game.
Oh, I saw like full butt. I saw a full butt in a Final Fantasy mainline game. I don't think that's ever happened before. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not saying that to complain, by the way. I mean, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, and I'm glad that they're mixing it up because I to its credit, I think it makes the dialogue better. One, that it's different, but also it does not fall into the cringy sort of like stereotypical JRPG dialogue that like I think of Kingdom Hearts at this point as like the worst offender of that. And you know, it's all Square Enix, but like it doesn't get anywhere near that. Like it feels like they watched a lot of medieval prestige television and were like, oh, we need to tighten up this dialogue and have these characters speak like, I mean, real people, but like real people of like the period that they occupy. And it's impressed me of like, oh, like I'm not like wincing at like this uncomfortable, unnecessary pause every other sentence or anything like that.
There's some of that in the side quest and with the, I mean, when you see an NPC that's not a main character, you will know immediately that this is not an important figure.
Hi, what's going on, adventurer?
Yeah.
Or they do the thing where they don't even talk, like they say like the first two words and then you just skip through the text.
Hey.
There's a little bit of that, but not
that's
too
true.
much, fortunately. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, which is something I didn't even realize. But yeah, getting away from the modern timelines, which Final Fantasy has been in since, I mean, at least 13. 10's kind of in a weird spot. I mean, none of them are medieval though. But now that they're like back in like classic medieval Final Fantasy, they do get to kind of, to their advantage, use not elevated language, but it's like they're all talking proper and medieval, and so you're not getting like the cringe lines that you'd find in like a 15 or
and it doesn't go overboard with the medieval. Like they're not like thou art shall, you know. It's like it's not like I understand what everyone is saying pretty clearly, but yeah, and I think the performances have also been pretty strong from the characters that I've met so far. Is Sidolphus the same voice actor that plays Lorath in Diablo 4?
Yeah.
Okay, it's so
Ralph
wild.
Ineson. He's the dad in the Vivitch, the witch. Excellent movie.
Okay.
But yeah,
I like that.
I started Final Fantasy 16 and Diablo 4 in the same week, like when I got code. And so I was just getting bombarded by his incredibly deep, awesome voice, and I was like, "This is awesome. Games are awesome."
It's funny because like Lorath in Diablo 4 is like on my list of like one of the best characters of the year, and like I'm already like really high on Sidolphus right now. You're like, is this guy gonna be like two of the best characters of the year?
Sid's great. He's an awesome character. The whole cast is pretty great as far as like voice acting goes, and some characters are written better than others, but I think for the most part, they kind of knocked it out of the park with everybody. There's no one that's like a clear, their character didn't get their due or whatnot, and I don't think they really put anybody to the wayside in a weird or offensive way, which is nice.
I also like Clive. Like I think there was some worry that he might be like too like grimdark or whatever it is. And while he's like again, to use the Jon Snow thing, like he has some of that like, I don't know if angst is the word I want to use, but like some of that like cool like mopiness, but it doesn't get as mopey. Like he has a lot of like, even certain scenes I've seen where there's some lighter moments where he shows like not a goofier side, but like a lighter side to him, where he'll react to things, and it's kind of funny. Where it's like he's put in a weird, like awkward situation. He's just like, oh, I guess this is just what's happening to me now, and he just kind of rolls with the punches in a way that like I'm liking about it. It makes him feel a little bit more well-rounded than just like I'm angry and I want revenge. You know?
And but he looks like a character that would be that. Like I remember his reveal, and then even on our cover, people are like, man, this is a very different protagonist. Like this is a rough and tough dude who carries a big sword and he's got spiky black leather and stuff.
He's coming to your town.
Yeah, and he kind of, I mean, he sees that is that way at first glance because he has like a very deep and just gruff, straight to the point voice. But like, yeah, his character isn't that, which is refreshing and surprising for me because I admittedly did think he was going to be just a straight shooter, rough and tough dude.
Yeah, like I genuinely like him so far.
Yeah, I think I had that vibe from him at first. I've also played like a few hours. I don't know where the demo ends, so I don't know if I've passed it or not, but I remember you see like the very beginning, and then there's kind of like a flashback and you see him younger, and I felt like, first of all, I don't know if it's just because of like being in the games media industry of like you start a lot of games, but I feel like you can really tell in the first few hours of a game like how you're going to feel about it. And there's a lot of time where I'm like, I know people say this game is good, but this first hour is driving me nuts and I don't feel like doing these tutorials. And I feel like this game, like right off the bat, I was like very invested in the story and characters, even though it was like, it's a lot of cutscenes, and I was not annoyed by that. I was like totally down to sit and watch and see these characters interact. And I think coming back to like the present day Clive and seeing now why he's like this after seeing kind of like his origin story at the start, I was like, oh, I totally understand this now. His gruff behavior is good actually, and I am excited to like fight with him for stuff.
It's funny that, we talk about Lorath being played by the same guy. The kid Joshua that plays your younger brother.
Yeah,
like him being voiced by the actor that plays Hugo in the Plague Tale games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like you hear it immediately, and it's just like, is he just going to be typecast as like, we need adorable younger brother who is cursed with a great power that's also killing him?
Like, I have a story from this talking to the localization
Are there
director.
rats in Final Fantasy 16?
No, it's just a flame bird.
Yeah, same thing really.
Yeah, pretty much.
They had a different actor, and then the actor went through puberty and couldn't do that voice well anymore. Oh. And at the same time, the localization director was playing Plague Tale, and he was like, well, hold on, this kid's perfect, let's call him up. And so that's how he
basically
got
the
job.
character.
Do you think the first actor was super salty?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I'd be devastated.
So. I bet he gave them a mouthful with his cracking voice over the phone.
I need to like look into that.
Hey, you better listen to me.
I do like the idea of them
contract.
casting you and being like, yeah, we're looking for like a Tom Holland type. And then like you do all the recording like, ooh, sorry, we actually got Tom Holland for this one, so you're good for now. Not that the character sounds like Tom Holland, it was just my example.
Yeah.
I just couldn't help but chuckle of like, I read your feature, Wes. I knew it was him, but you realize, like, yeah, man, this could basically the same character. Same tragic
just living
thing.
a terrible life
with this amazing power. And the combat too. I've recently got like the second power, like the second like icon power, like Garuda. So like it's got to the point where I was enjoying the combat, but then when you get the second one, you see what the game's gonna be of like being able to switch between those two on the fly, and then all the Devil May Cry comparisons are pretty appropriate now that you're like, oh, this is like changing styles in DMC of like from gunslinger to sword master, of like, okay, Garuda is like super combo heavy, and
you get to use those abilities in addition to transforming. Okay, so is it kind of like, and I'm sorry for going off the rails a bit, is it similar to how in Bayonetta you have like, you are kind of using the demon powers in your normal fights and then you can summon them for the big stuff? No? Okay.
So you can equip up to 3 at a time, and each one has a circle command. So the Phoenixes let you like shift teleport kind of across the field. Garuda pulls an enemy towards you, and then So you're using that quite often, and then you're just attacking with like Clive's weapon, his sword, and using square and triangle, doing combos, parries, dodges, and then you can hold R2, and that opens up on your wheel a square attack or a triangle, and those are iconic abilities. So Phoenix has 2, Garuda has 2. You can equip 2 at a time, and then you use those, and they're on a cooldown. So it's
and then there are those big cinematic battles where you like turn into the icon.
Those are very segmented or separate, like scripted, I guess you could say. Those happen at key story moments. Like you can't just become Ifrit whenever you want.
I didn't think so, but I wasn't aware that you also had like minor versions of those abilities as well. That's cool.
Yeah, and then you also have like Limit Break, which is you know pretty standard for Final Fantasy. But yeah, I mean those. I can't say too much about the combat, but it goes places, and you just continue to unlock more abilities. And you can customize it in a lot of different ways. And you'll have, when you're done with the game, you'll have like a build, and you'll have almost an attack pattern that you utilize to take down any enemy. Like I know if I'm fighting an enemy, okay, I'm going to stagger them with this, and then I'm going to use this ability followed by this ability, and then this one, and it's going to do this much damage. Like you'll have a build because of just how much mixing and matching there is.
Yeah, I've already found myself doing that even in the early stages. Because I'm like a stylish action sicko, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest compliment I can give is that the combat, like, it feels good to attack. You know,
it's like my favorite combat in a game. I think I put that in my review. But like, by the end of it, I'm obsessed with this combat. It is my favorite by far.
Yeah, like it looks cool. Like last second dodging and triggering the slow mo is great. Like the doing the stagger, which is almost like a Final Fantasy 13 carryover of like staggering them and raining hell on them. Like just the flow, and all the enemies that I fought so far have been pretty nicely varied, and they all offer different challenges. Like I feel challenged but not like overwhelmed, and it feels like and I kind of like that this game has some bite to it, where it feels like a lot of the harder fights I end them and I'm like, I have like 1 potion left. And granted, you're not carrying like a ton, at least in the early stages, but like I'm like, oh my god, I'm almost out of stuff after that big combat encounter. Okay, all right, we're not messing around a little bit. I like that.
Oh yeah, no, it's it's weird. It was never like, I wouldn't say like hard in like a traditionally hard way. I mean, it is challenging, and I did die sometimes, but without dying, the combat was still had a really nice sense of challenge. Like you said, I was ending with 1 potion. I wasn't getting killed like I would in a Souls game and just dying over and over, but like it was like nail biting often. And that's partly because I'm trying to pull off these wild combos, and sometimes it fails, and then my whole plan is like foiled, and sometimes it works.
Like I should have dodged, but I was trying to do this cool thing.
Yeah, exactly. But also, the combat just throughout the game till the very end it opens up more and more and more and gets more robust. I love this combat.
Yeah, I will say I've accidentally spent potions thinking that I was on Torgal's attacks.
Yeah.
And I have thrown away high potions being like, why isn't he biting right now? And then I look down and realize in horror that I've used all of my stuff accidentally.
You just made me realize I didn't mention Torgal in my review, but it's kind of like a nothing. I never really noticed here, like whether it was helping me a lot or not helping me as much. Like his heal does like 10 or 20 HP, which isn't going to save you.
Smash that thing.
Yeah.
Like, fill me up, buddy.
And his attacks weren't ever doing, like, I basically kind of just didn't worry about him. And they have an accessory that automatically does Torgal's attacks for you, but you only get 3 accessories. And I wouldn't say that one does enough to like take up a whole slot.
I like using his launch to like send people airborne, and then I'll go up there and do an air combo. And then I still haven't figured out how he does this, but there's sometimes where I'll attack and it's like his basic like Sikkim thing. And then sometimes he'll do like a Blanca rolling ball, like Sonic the Hedgehog spin attack. And I've been trying to figure out why he does that sometimes. And other, like, I assume it's just like depending on what you're doing in conjunction.
If you go to your attributes, he has combos, but he does them himself. Like,
okay, so I'm like stumbling into those combos, I guess.
Exactly. It doesn't tell you how to do it, but it'll be like, I forget the names of the attacks, but it shows an attack and it's like Torgal will do this, and I'm like, I don't have any idea how or why, but he does it, so cool.
I've been actively trying to figure out. Yeah, because when those hit, those do like decent damage, and it like kind of like freezes them in place for a while where I can wail on them. So I've been trying to master doing that at will. you know. But yeah, I'd say across the board, like he doesn't hurt the combat being there, but he's not like a oh my god game changer.
Yeah, you don't have to stress over remembering to use him. Like if you forget, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think in closing, your enjoyment will depend almost exclusively on how much you like the combat. If you don't like the combat, you're not going to like this game because you do a lot of combat. But if you like the combat, it offers a lot of depth for people who want that. And I think the story goes to some wild places that is worth seeing for the spectacle alone. It takes some swings that it doesn't necessarily land, but overall, I think this is going to be a hit for the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah, I think I've out of all the recent Final Fantasies, which is with a question mark because they come so few and far between, I don't think I've thoroughly enjoyed the opening hours as much as I think 10 might have been the last one where I was like completely on board, like sold for the first like few hours. Even like 13 and 15, which like
you didn't like pushing a car.
Yeah, it's funny how far opposite this is of like pushing a car. Like now you're gonna do like a cool 50 hit combo with like gods fighting each other and stuff. Yeah, like I don't have any like big hangups so far, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like even 13, which I thought 13 had a strong start, it like narratively, but then kind of fell apart a little quickly. At least for me. I know you love that game, Wes, but
yeah. No, I mean,
yeah,
it's got its faults for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so far I don't know. Maybe it is the Game of Thronesification of it, and it being one of my favorite shows of all time. But it's one of those weird like peanut butter and chocolate combinations of like, and then also tacking on like Devil May Cry basically. Like, oh, these three things that I really like coming together in an unlikely way, and like it works so far. And I'm really like I'm super excited to keep playing more of it.
It's been oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You can finish your thought. I was gonna
say it's been weird writing a review for it because like I love the game a lot, but then I'm also having to address real criticisms I have with it. Whereas the Final Fantasy fan in me is like, you love this game. I love 13. It has its faults, but I just kind of ignore those. But then I'm like having to write out my actual issues. So it's been a very fun exercise in I guess like rerouting my brain to, you know, I'm writing critically about something I love a lot and having to dissect what I love and what I don't love. Yeah, it's been fun. What were we gonna say, Charles?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what your other favorite Final Fantasy games are, and then I don't know if you have like a ranking of them. I was gonna ask where this ranks in there, and I was like, that might be too soon to ask that, but just to know what your Final Fantasy taste is like.
13 is my favorite, but I don't think it's the best. 13 has a very special place. It was the first one I ever bought, and I've played it a ton, and I love that game. 6, obviously, I love a lot. 7, 10. I actually did like 15 a good bit. It is properly critiqued and fairly critiqued, and it's a very messy game, but I still enjoyed it. And I really like 8. 8 was a lot of fun. I haven't played it in forever, so I don't know if it like holds up to 2023 Wesley, but very young Wesley really enjoyed 8. So as far as where this one ranks, it'll be pretty high. I think it's tough because like you got to sit with it a bit. Like I just beat it, and I haven't been able to really, you guys are the first people I've talked to about it in a deeper way. But I think it'll be pretty high on my personal list. I'm excited for us to have to duke it out for our Game Informer list.
God, that's gonna be what a year! Like this summer alone, it just.
Oh, I'm talking about our Final Fantasy ranked list, but yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean that.
Even Game of the Year, like eventually. I mean, I doubt it beats Tears of the Kingdom for a lot of people, but I haven't beaten. I'm only like 20 hours into Tears of the Kingdom, but this is my Game of the Year so far.
Yeah, it's like this, like Diablo, that Street Fighter, Star
Survivor.
Wars.
Survivor's ridiculous.
We've been eating real good.
Crime Boss Rocket City.
Gollum.
For some, yeah.
It's wild to think that, like, even with this and all the games we mentioned, there's still like Starfield and like Spider-Man and Alan Wake on the horizon and a bunch of other stuff.
And the new 2D Mario and 3D Mario that they announced at the Direct yesterday.
Yeah, what a wild announcement that was, right?
Yeah. Mario Odyssey 2 and
Can't believe they got Chris
the
Pratt
big
back
Super
to
Mario
voice him.
Bros.
Wait, are you guys joking or do you know information that
But
I
this
don't?
goes out Thursday, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
we
so
don't
the
know
direct
anything.
happens tomorrow, but I'm hoping that there's some Mario announcements.
We're trying
I
to
thought-
sound.
Yeah, okay. Well, normally we riff and
I like how
stuff.
your head snapped up, Alex. Like, wait a second.
I was like, do you know like any pre-announcements that are happening?
We're trying to preemptively sound smart.
Dude, if we got a new Super Mario Odyssey 2,
That would be too smart. Nintendo's going to be like, how about we do a brand new 3D Mario game? We drop all the Cappy stuff that
no,
everyone
it's
loves,
gonna
and we
be
just
another
do something
2D
else.
Mario
It's going to be
game.
a scene of Miyamoto throwing Cappy to the floor and rubbing his feet, grinding his feet. He's like, not again.
I saw a leak. I don't think it was an actual leak that said the game would feature Luigi and his hat's name would be Bowler, and it would be a bowler hat. And I was like, I hate this.
Can they call him Boley?
Why are they changing Luigi's hat?
Super Mario Odyssey Luigi's
Mario
Journey.
wears the same hat.
I mean, it's
a gentleman
Mario's.
now.
Yeah, why shouldn't? I don't know.
That.
Charles, tell me
Yes.
real quick about Stray Gods. I know you've
Stray
been playing it. Well, there's a demo or something.
Yeah, there's a demo on Steam. There was a demo earlier, and then I think the Steam like Next Fest demo is a little bit longer. But I'll talk. I played a little bit of it. I'll talk about the game kind of generally. If you're a fan of musicals, this is like the coolest game concept ever to me. It is like a choose your own adventure, except you're choosing the dialogue during musical numbers that the characters are doing. And it takes place, it's kind of like Greek gods theme. So the whole thing is there's like this murder that happened and you're trying to figure out who did it. And then you have the power of a muse. So whenever someone's like confronting their emotions, you can get them to like basically sing a confession of like how they feel about it. And it's got like a bonkers cast of like, when I heard of it, I was like, wow, this was like the whole budget, huh? It was just all of
The entire
it's like-
cast of The Last of Us.
yeah, it's Laura Bailey and Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm a big fan of like D&D actual play shows. And Laura Bailey and Ashley Johnson obviously are on Critical Role. There's Erika Ishii, they're on Dimension 20 often. I think they've also been on Critical Role. A bunch of like people in there, and even actors where I didn't recognize their name, and I would look it up and I'm like, oh, that's Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins. Or oh, I know exactly what that is. So that's wild. And then yeah, the concept was cool to me, and I think playing it it works. And I think the thing that I wasn't expecting is when you're picking like the dialogue option, right? Like in a normal game, you can just kind of sit there and be like, am I going to be a nice person? Am I going to be a jerk? When it's in like the middle of the song, you have until, the end of that measure to select your thing. And if you don't pick, it chooses randomly. So there's like this interesting narrative pressure of like, oh God, who am I going to side with? Am I going to be a nice person? Am I going to be mean? And yeah, it's just an interesting game. I think the lead writer, he was like a writer on a bunch of Dragon Age games. So yeah, it seems cool.
Austin Wintory composing it too.
Yes. Oh yeah, I don't know. I didn't mention that. Austin Wintory, he's doing the music. There's a Australian comedy musical group called Tripod that also is writing a lot of the songs. And then there's another Australian musician named Montaigne who's working on the music as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So it's a lot of people.
do we know who's doing the art? Because every time I look at this game, I swear it's Fiona Staples, who probably most famously is the artist behind Saga. And it looks so much like her art to where I remember at one point trying to look up who did the art for this game, and I could not find an answer. I was like, okay, maybe it's just their internal art studio and maybe not one. But I was looking for like and we got Fiona Staples to do the art. Because I was like, man, it looks a lot like Saga.
Yeah, I think it's not that person. It is someone named Benjamin E.
Okay.
Their last name is literally just the letter E twice.
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
But there was like a piece I found of like Kotaku Australia on them because they're also Australian. The studio's based in Australia.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because there's like horn people too, but it was hitting the same sort of notes. Okay. Interesting.
Pun intended or pun unintended?
Oh, pun unintended. But
Okay. That's disappointing.
you can intend it for me if you like.
Okay. Hitting the same notes.
Hey.
Wow. Are you gonna share that lunch recording you made?
I already did.
You did? Okay, I gotta.
I sang Charles is going to lunch, but the Final Fantasy 7 or not Final Fantasy 7.
You shared that publicly though, right? Not just in
on
Slack?
Twitter. I
Okay.
tweeted it. It's because when you level up in Final Fantasy 16, it's like a chorus that sings it, and it had never occurred to me before that someone could sing that, and I was like, I gotta do that.
Yeah.
You can sing this song?
Yeah.
What?
You gonna enter the talent show, the internal talent show that our company's throwing?
I was thinking that'd be really funny if that was my one entry, and there's like.
I was practicing earlier. I'm gonna submit.
You might win by default because you're probably not a huge pool for that.
The thing is, whenever there are contests like this, very few people actually submit, and so it is. I have won so many contests by just submitting the bare. I won a $800 statue one time from a Nerdist contest because I had heard through the grapevine that like. They had 3 entrants or something. Like they had like very few entrants, and they were giving away like all this stuff. And there was like 4 hours left before the deadline of the contest. And at the time I was like practicing pixel art, and I did like pixel art of the 2 hosts on the show, except I only got 1 done. And I submitted it as is.
Wow.
And they like showed it off on the show, and one of the hosts was like, "Oh, this is interesting pixel art, but where am I?" And I was just thinking to myself, "Well, I didn't have enough time to do you, but I wanted to submit." I ended up winning 3rd place.
Hey. Rocking the bronze.
And so whenever, Charles, there is and for people who don't know, our company is sponsoring like a in network, like a company wide talent show with like a prize. So I'll see you out there. I'll see you on the podium, Charles.
I think there's 10 semifinalists.
10?
And then 5 finalists will go and perform ?
In Vegas
judges
or
Vegas
something.
thing. Yeah.
I'll see you there. We'll be roommates.
Like
I'll just show up and
Adam
be like,
Levine's gonna be there judging.
Hey,
Wait,
guys,
what?
this
Is that real?
No, but I mean, it sounds like it is. So like, hey, we're gonna.
I'm sorry. I'm very gullible today. I don't know why.
It's like, how far are we taking this?
I just feel like Adam Levine has fallen from grace a little bit.
Oh, is he problematic now?
I
Or
mean,
is he
He
just
like-
not doing?
cheated
Is
on
he
his
just not
wife.
making it
Yeah.
right now?
He
got
cheated
kicked
on his
off The
wife,
Voice.
and the texts were just really cringe. So it was
Yeah.
simultaneously like, oh, you cheated on your wife, and like, oh, that's you flirting. You're out of luck.
Okay, I don't follow him, so it's like
Yeah.
the last thing
Yeah.
I remember was that he was on it was The Voice, right?
yeah, he got kicked off. He was also
because
just
of that?
generally unlikable as a person,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But it wouldn't surprise me if like a major corporation like hired him for like their company talent show at this
because
point.
he's readily accessible now.
Yeah.
he has to take what he can get.
He's trying to find his next big break. No, I think he's doing just fine. Yeah. Well, cool. How do you guys feel about ending it here? I know, Marcus, you're going to talk about Dordogne. Dordogne.
Here, let me help you out. I've got the pronunciation
Dordogne.
right now.
Dordogne. Dordogne.
You-
Dordogne.
Wait, hold on. I think I have it. I have a audio that does not want to play suddenly.
Dordogne. I think I'm saying it
There we
right.
go. We can cut this out. This long wait for this.
Dordogne.
Looking at how to pronounce these words.
Oh, this is like a whole. Just say the word.
I love that.
Stay tuned to the channel in French. It is
Okay, this guy.
Come on, we gotta let him get his shout outs.
Dordogne.
Oh,
Dordogne. I said it right.
Yeah.
Did you hear him?
Dordogne.
It's like sexy voice.
Dordogne.
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 I don't know what that like preamble was, but
Like and subscribe. Dordogne.
I played that game.
You want to talk about it real quick before we head out?
Yeah, I think I've talked about it on the show before when I played the demo, but it's
I
cool,
remember.
very, very beautiful watercolor adventure game where you it's set in Dordogne, which is a region in France.
Yeah.
And you play as this woman named Mimi who goes back to her grandma's home because she has recently passed away, and she's basically trying to remember her time there that she spent one summer as a 12-year-old, because for some reason she doesn't remember any of it. And also her father does not want her to go to this place because he has had a very strained relationship with their grandparents or her grandparents for reasons unknown. And the bulk of the game takes place where you play as the 12-year-old version of Mimi. You're kind of jumping back and forth between the past and the present, whereas present Mimi, you're exploring a house and then you find like a key item, and then that triggers a flashback where you play like a very lengthy sequence as kid Mimi. And just sort of like getting to see what that relationship was like with her and her grandma. Like the thing that you see about this game is that it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's such a pretty game. It really, like, I know we use that cliche of like, it's like a painting come to life, or like a cartoon come to life. But it really does feel like you are walking through like an art gallery of like a really good watercolor painter, where just even the way things are framed, for better or worse, it looks great as static images, but sometimes certain like pathways, like trying to find something that's walkable can be tricky, because you're like, oh, there's a passage behind here that isn't clearly communicated, because just by nature of how you lay things out on a canvas, it's not always conducive to like game design, because it's like no one's going to be walking through your painting. But that doesn't happen super often. There's just a few moments where like, I think I'm bumping up against these bushes and I think there's something behind here. But you're going around, you're collecting like little keepsakes like cassette tapes and stickers and like giant words that appear everywhere that you can later use to write little poems. And you're basically using them to fill a scrapbook that sort of documents each week with your grandma, because it kind of takes place over like a 4-week vacation there. And you're seeing like, okay, you're seeing their bond, but you're also learning a bit about the history of your family in general, mainly like the falling out between your grandparents and your father. And the game gets like has some edges of darkness in a way that, like a good 80s coming of age story has, where like it's whimsical and like friendly enough for kids, but there's enough like mature stuff like implied to where as an adult you can enjoy, and you're like, oh, okay, there's some like, I don't want to say sinister, but there's something that's like not cool maybe happening or has happened in the past that maybe you see some of the consequence of now, and you kind of get to know your grandmother better. But I think the performances are great. It's just a really pleasant game. Like the puzzle solving is not challenging. It's more like creative, just the way you interact with things, because it kind of has like a point and click style interaction. Like you have a literal mouse cursor to do a lot of the big puzzles, which can feel a little awkward to controller just because that's just how that works. But I like how they sort of like find imaginative ways to do basic things of like, oh, you could click this door to open it, but instead you're gonna like click, hold it, and like manually turn it and then pull it open, and like fun little interactions. And they always find new ways to have you do simple things of like, oh, you're gonna hold your hands over this object until a meter fills, you can grab it. Or there's a cool one where like you have a friend who lives like down a valley from your house, and you're gonna shout like, hey, what's up? And the way they convey that is that you have these word bubbles that you slingshot over the cliff, and that's supposed to be like, oh yeah, you're like, hello, like you're like throwing your voice literally, basically. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's pretty clever. I like that. So it's like there's a playfulness and a whimsy that I really like, and it all feels really nice. It's it's like a short little 4 or 5 hour game. There's some pretty like poignant moments in there between Mimi and her grandmother. And then I think some of the stuff, the way they connect like the broader story or the backstory, leaves a little to be desired. Like there's some stuff I still don't feel like I have a good sense of like why her dad hates her parents, and also the fact that a lot of that context is found in these collectible notes that you can miss. So like I encourage some thorough exploration, which means you're going to be running around the house quite a bit each chapter. But the otherwise, I just enjoyed it. I think it's just like a solid, really fun, and also very fun to look at adventure game. Like I gave it an 8 overall, and yeah, just check it out. I think it's on Game Pass. I think. I don't know for sure. Don't quote me. Don't hold me to it, but I want to say that it is. I feel like I heard someone mention it is, but regardless, I think it's on pretty much everything.
It is on Game Pass. Yeah.
But there you go. So, if you're subscribed to that, I think it's always weird to say a good Game Pass game, because I feel like that sort of like sells it short sometimes.
Sure.
But I think I want to say, like, if you have the means and you have something like that, it's like, yeah, fire that up. There's a bunch of other stuff on Game Pass. This is one that I think it's worth spending some time, especially if you're looking for like a good chill pill in between all of these gigantic multi-hour long epics that we've been getting this month between Diablo and Zelda and now soon Final Fantasy. I liked it. It was a good palate cleanser, and it's cool.
Awesome.
Dordogne.
Awesome.
Now we all know how to say that word too.
We
which
do.
is really
Dordogne.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap things down, slow things down. If you want to support Game Informer, go get a print version of the Armored Core 6 cover. You go to GameStop.com/Game Informer. That'll be available for $5.99. Of course, if you have an active print subscription, that'll be hitting your mailbox in the coming weeks. And if you want to read the magazine digitally, you can go get access to that. Head over to GameInformer.com/magazine to learn how to do that. Lastly, follow these gents here on social media. You can follow Charles at ChuckDuck365. You can follow Wes at LeBlancWes. Follow Marcus at MarcusStewart7. And you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Don't forget to go and listen to All Things Nintendo, which is our weekly Nintendo podcast that goes out on Fridays. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. And lastly, shout out to our podcast editor, Matt, aka DJ Stormageddon. They host Fun and Games, which is a general gaming podcast, and the Reignite podcast, which is a BioWare replay retrospective podcast. So go check them out and their work. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend. We'll see you next Thursday. Bye.
Can I play us out real quick?
Yeah, please play us out.
Can you hear that?
One more time. Uh-huh.
Yes. It's a little muffled.
Discord's cutting it
That
out.
was
I
perfect.
like that.
That was great.
It's like it might be a noise gate.
Thanks for that, Charles. Yeah, we really cool.
Can Charles just be like the in-house band of the Game Informer show?
Really?
No, I think if Discord hadn't cut you out, it would have been great. But it was just very funny because it was like,
Good job, Charles.
I mean, it'll be on my local recording.
I'll see you at the talent show, Charles.